I almost dropped my coffee when I saw the headline, HOA President Declares War on Eyesore Clock Tower, Vows Total Demolition for Modern Harmony. My great-grandfather's clock, my family's legacy, they were coming for it. So yeah, that headline hit me like a wrench to the head, right there in my gut. HOA President Declares War on Eyesore Clock Tower. Eyesore? That clock? That's not just a clock, that's the beating heart of this place. This entire property, this house, this workshop, it's been the Finch family's domain for over a century. 3 generations have lived and breathed here, turning gears, polishing brass, coaxing life back into mechanisms that most people would call junk. My great-grandfather, Elias Finch, he wasn't just some guy who knew how to fix watches. He was an artist, a tinkerer, a self-taught engineer with a mind sharper than any lathe. He built this house with his own 2 hands back in the early 1900s, brick by brick, beam by beam. And that clock, the one they're calling an eyesore, he designed it himself, cast the gears in his own foundry out back, and painstakingly assembled every single piece. It's a masterpiece of precision and endurance, and it's been keeping perfect time for 90-something years, through wars, recessions, and more local drama than you can shake a stick at. It wasn't just a clock on a building, it was a landmark. Ask anyone who grew up around here, anyone over the age of 40. They'll tell you stories. How people used to set their watches by it, literally, walking past on their way to the old town square. How it chimed on the hour, a comforting sound that marked the rhythm of daily life in Willow Creek. It was a beacon, a reference point in a world that was constantly changing. My grandfather, Thomas, he took over after Elias. He added the stained glass window above the workshop door, depicting gears and cogs, little flashes of color that dance on the antique brass when the sun hits just right. My father, Arthur, he expanded the collection, bringing in old phonographs, music boxes, anything with a spring and a soul. He always said, "Caleb, these aren't just objects, they're time capsules. They hold memories, whispers of lives lived, moments captured in intricate mechanisms." And now, me, Caleb Finch, 50 years old, and I've dedicated my life to this. People call me an introvert, and maybe I am. I prefer the quiet hum of 100 tiny gears working in harmony to the endless chatter of most social gatherings. Give me a broken repeater watch from the 1800s, or a derelict player piano that hasn't sung in 50 years, and I'm in my element. There's a profound satisfaction in taking something silent, broken, forgotten, and coaxing it back to life. It's like being a surgeon for history, bringing back a piece of the past so it can tell its story again. This workshop with its high ceilings, the smell of oiled wood, antique brass, and a hint of something indescribably old and profound. It's my sanctuary. Every tool, every workbench, every dusty shelf holding parts and half-finished projects, they all have a place. My collection of unique, yet-to-be-restored mechanisms, some dating back centuries, are carefully organized in what Victoria Payton, that walking human megaphone, calls my cluttered yard, or a hideous junkyard. She sees rust and decay. I see potential, history waiting to be reawakened. These aren't just pieces of metal, they're unique artifacts, some of them custom-built, one of a kind. The clock on the facade, though, that's different. It's not just an artifact I'm restoring. It's the artifact. It's the constant, the enduring symbol of my family's legacy, their dedication, and their connection to this town. It represents continuity, precision, and a quiet artistry that's completely lost on someone like Victoria. It's the heart of this place, quite literally. And now, this self-proclaimed HOA president wants to tear it down, calling it an eyesore in her pathetic quest for modern harmony. Modern harmony, what she means is sterile, bland, soulless. What she means is a place where everything looks like it just rolled off an assembly line, with no character, no history, no soul, and she was coming for my soul. It was barely 7 in the morning when the first real strike came. I was in the workshop, already deep into dismantling a particularly stubborn repeater pocket watch when the grinding noise started outside. Not the usual delivery truck rumble, this was heavier, louder. I looked out the window and saw it, a massive utility truck, the kind usually reserved for major roadwork, with a crew of 3 guys in hard hats already setting up orange cones. And then, like a brightly colored thundercloud, Victoria Payton emerged from her gleaming white SUV, clipboard in hand, a wide, almost manic smile plastered across her face. She marched straight to the old town square, right across from my workshop where the ancient oak tree stood. It was always a quiet, understated space, a natural extension of the neighborhood's older charm. But Victoria had different ideas, clearly. She began barking orders at the crew, pointing wildly at the ground. Then her eyes landed on my workshop. She walked over, not even bothering to come up the steps to my porch. just stood there on the sidewalk, gesturing dramatically at my facade with her free hand, still holding that damn clipboard like it was a scepter. "Mr. Finch?" she called out, her voice annoyingly cheerful, carrying across the quiet morning air. "Isn't this just a glorious day for revitalization?" I stepped out, wiping grease from my hands with a rag. "Revitalization of what, exactly, Ms. Peyton?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. My gaze flickered to the truck and the tools. They looked serious. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Oh, Caleb, darling, don't be coy. The square, of course, and by extension, your contribution to the neighborhood's aesthetic." She gestured vaguely at my entire property. "Let's be frank, your eclectic collection doesn't exactly scream modern harmony, does it?" My Gatsini's eclectic collection was a row of carefully tarped antique automotive parts awaiting restoration, neatly lined up alongside the old stone wall of the workshop. To me, it was organized work in progress. To her, clearly, it was an eyesore. "And that clock," she continued, her smile tightening as she looked up at the old timepiece. It's rather dated, wouldn't you agree? Distracts from the new vision." "Dated? My great-grandfather's clock?" I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "That clock is a piece of history, Ms. Peyton. It's been here for almost a century." "History is charming, of course," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "But progress is paramount, and your collection, it's a code violation, unauthorized outdoor storage. Section 4B of the new HOA bylaws, effective immediately. Fine of $150 a day until remedied." She tapped her clipboard decisively. "And the clock, while not directly a storage issue, is a visual nonconformity. We're asking you to remove it, or at least replace it with something more appropriate. Something that reflects the new Willow Creek." "Asking?" I repeated, my voice now tighter. "Or telling?" Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, narrowed. "Let's call it a strong recommendation. With consequences for non-compliance, of course. We're initiating a major beautification project for the town square right here." She gestured grandly at the empty space. "And we simply cannot have your antiquated aesthetic dragging down the entire vision. We need cohesiveness. We need impact. And you, Mr. Finch, are currently a very large obstacle to that impact." She then pulled out a laminated blueprint from her clipboard. It was a glossy, sickeningly cheerful rendering of the town square. Bright, fake-looking flowers and uniform planters, a gaudy modern sculpture where the old oak stood, and worst of all, a huge digital LED screen plastered over the very spot where my clock would have been. It looked like a billboard for a discount furniture store. "We begin work on the square this afternoon," she announced, beaming at the crew, then back at me. "And we expect your cooperation. Remove the clutter, repaint that drab facade, and consider the clock. We want a cohesive visual experience. We want a wow factor, and we want it fast." She paused for dramatic effect. "You have exactly 24 hours to begin compliance. After that, the daily fines kick in. And believe me, Mr. Finch, we have ways to ensure compliance." She gave me a condescending nod, turned on her heel, and walked back towards her SUV, leaving me standing there, staring at the perfectly manicured, soulless vision of her new Willow Creek. The air was already thick with the smell of freshly cut sod and the faint, sickeningly sweet scent of artificial plastic flowers from the truck. She'd made her first move, and it was a direct hit on the heart of my home. My stomach churned as I watched Victoria drive off, leaving me standing amidst the scent of plastic flowers and fresh sod. 24 hours. That was her deadline. For a minute, I just stood there, looking at my clock, then at the heaps of clutter she wanted gone. This wasn't about rules, it was about her, and her precious vision. I tried to be reasonable. My first move was to call the HOA office, not Victoria directly, but the general line, hoping to speak to someone, anyone, who had a shred of common sense. I got Brenda, the HOA secretary, a sweet older lady who sounded like she was walking on eggshells. She confirmed the new bylaws about outdoor storage and visual conformity, a bunch of vague nonsense slipped in at the last meeting that apparently passed by a slim margin. When I asked about the clock, she just sighed. "Mr. Finch, Victoria is very passionate about the new aesthetic. She says it's vital for property values." She couldn't offer any real help, just advised me to comply quickly to avoid further issues. That call did nothing but confirm my worst fears. Victoria had wormed her way into controlling the narrative, probably twisting whatever rules she wanted. The next morning, right on schedule, a yellow notice was taped to my front door. Violation, non-compliant outdoor storage. The fine, $150, daily, and then a separate notice. Request for aesthetic modification, clock tower. Failure to comply may result in further enforcement actions. No fine yet for the clock, but the implication was clear. She wasn't just fining me, she was warning me. That same afternoon, the real psychological warfare began. My neighbors, people I'd waved to for years, started avoiding eye contact. Mrs. Gable, who always stopped to chat about my latest restorations, suddenly seemed preoccupied with her rose bushes whenever I was outside. Tom Henderson, the mailman, usually lingered for a quick word, but now he just dropped the mail and hurried off. It was subtle, but it was there. Victoria was talking, probably filling their heads with nonsense about my workshop being a fire hazard or my junk attracting pests. Then came the social media blitz. Victoria, with her background in PR, apparently understood the power of a manufactured crisis. She started posting daily updates to the neighborhood's private Facebook group, Willow Creek Community Harmony. Her posts were saccharine sweet on the surface, but venomous underneath. She'd upload photos of the newly beautified town square, all bright plastic and gleaming surfaces, then strategically place a blurry, unflattering shot of my workshop in the background, subtly drawing attention to my dilapidated facade and the unsightly collection in my yard. So thrilled with the progress on our beautiful new town square, imagine the property value increase. But some elements still don't quite align with our shared vision of modern harmony. Let's encourage all residents to embrace the future. Willow Creek Harmony. It's a modern living, the community goals. The comments at first were mixed. Some people cautiously agreed, but others, older residents who remembered my great-grandfather, defended me. But Victoria was relentless. She'd respond to every positive comment with a flood of emojis and effusive thanks, and then subtly discredit anyone who questioned her, implying they didn't understand the larger vision or were resisting progress. She even started hinting at safety concerns related to my workshop, suggesting without proof that it might pose a risk to the community. It was a masterclass in passive-aggressive manipulation. The fines kept coming. Every morning, another yellow slip. $150, $300, $450. The reasons became increasingly ludicrous. Aggressive parking posture for my delivery van, which had been parked in the exact same spot for 15 years. Unauthorized use of power tools during aesthetic hours, because apparently repairing a delicate mechanism now constituted a noise violation at 10 a.m. It was clear she wasn't actually enforcing rules. She was inventing them, weaponizing them specifically against me. She was trying to bleed me dry, to force me out, or at least break my spirit. One afternoon, I came back from picking up a rare part and found two of Victoria's beautification crew in matching polo shirts standing right outside my property line, measuring something with a long tape. When I asked what they were doing, one of them, a lanky guy with a nervous twitch, mumbled something about property line adjustments for the new flower beds. It was flimsy, but their presence was a clear message. She was encroaching, physically and psychologically. The worst part was seeing the town square transform. The old oak tree, the one that had stood there for well over a century, was gone. Just a stump covered with a tarp. In its place, they were installing some kind of brightly colored, abstract metal sculpture that looked like a tangled pile of shiny, discarded plumbing. The gentle chimes of my great-grandfather's clock, which once marked the passage of time for the entire neighborhood, were now drowned out by the incessant hammering and drilling from the construction crew. She was systematically erasing the very history that defined this place, replacing it with her hollow plastic vision. Each blow of the hammer was a personal insult, a deliberate act of erasure. The quiet, consistent rhythm of my life was being disrupted, not by chaos, but by an aggressively imposed, utterly tasteless order. I felt a profound sense of loss watching something beautiful and authentic slowly disappear under the weight of her superficial ambition. She was chipping away at my world, piece by precious piece. After Victoria's little performance, with the fines piling up and the silent treatment from some of the neighbors, I knew I couldn't just ignore it. My first instinct, and frankly, my natural inclination, is to be methodical, to understand the mechanism before I try to fix it. So I decided to try the official channels, peacefully. I started by requesting a copy of the new HOA bylaws and meeting minutes. Victoria had talked a big game about new rules and unanimous votes. I figured if I saw the paperwork, I could find the loophole, the error, the point of entry to dismantle her little campaign. It took a week of polite persistence, with Brenda, the secretary, doing her best to sound apologetic while clearly being instructed to drag her feet. When the thick packet finally arrived, it was exactly what I expected: legalese, vague clauses, and a lot of boilerplate. The section on outdoor aesthetics was conveniently broad, and the meeting minutes for the vote on these new bylaws were sparse. They listed a bare quorum of attendees with a single quick vote recorded as passed unanimously. No discussion, no debate, just a rubber stamp. Next, I wrote a formal letter to the HOA board, I laid out my case calmly, factually. I explained the historical significance of the clock, provided photos of its pristine condition, detailed the precise organization of my outdoor storage, which was actually just carefully tarped vintage engine blocks and chassis, sorted for future projects, not random junk, and highlighted the continuous, multi-generational nature of my family's business. I offered alternatives. I could build a temporary, aesthetically pleasing screen around the storage area if that was truly the issue. I even suggested an informational plaque about the clock for the new town square, turning it into an asset rather than a liability. I wasn't trying to pick a fight, I was offering solutions, reasonable ones. The response came a few days later, a stiff, formal letter signed by Victoria herself, with a single line added in bold, underlined type. The board finds your suggestions charming, but ultimately non-compliant. We reiterate our original directives. Failure to adhere will result in escalated enforcement. No room for discussion. No offer to meet. Just a brick wall. I tried calling individual board members, the ones who had served for years before Victoria took over. Mr. Henderson, the retired school teacher who lived 2 streets over, politely but firmly told me he had to support the board's collective decision for the good of the community. Mrs. Davies, who used to bring her antique music box to me for annual checkups, simply hung up when I mentioned Victoria's name. It was clear Victoria had already leaned on them, probably threatening them with removal or exposing some petty violation of their own. She was using fear. My last attempt at peace was through mediation. There was a local community mediation service that sometimes handled HOA disputes. I contacted them, explained the situation, and requested their help in setting up a meeting with the HOA board. They sent a formal request to the HOA. A week later, I received a short, dismissive email from Victoria forwarded by the mediation service. It stated, "The Willow Creek Homeowners Association sees no need for external mediation. Our bylaws are clear, and Mr. Finch is simply refusing to comply with established rules. We believe this is a matter of personal stubbornness, not a dispute." She framed it as my problem, my intransigence, not a mutual disagreement. It was infuriating. Every attempt to engage, to be rational, to find common ground, was met with a cold, dismissive response. She wasn't interested in solutions, she was interested in victory. My patience, a virtue I usually possessed in abundance when dealing with delicate clockwork, was starting to wear thin. It was like trying to reason with a broken spring. No matter how gently you tried to adjust it, it would just snap back with more tension. Every no, every slammed door, every condescending dismissal just reinforced her arrogance and strengthened my resolve. She thought she was breaking me down, but all she was doing was winding me up, and she had no idea how precisely I could unwind. All those rejections, all that dismissal from Victoria, it just fueled a different kind of fire in me. Not anger, not exactly, more like a meticulous resolve. If she wanted to play by rules, I'd find the real rules. My family's history, my great-grandfather's legacy, I knew there had to be something deeper than just HOA bylaws. He was too smart, too careful to leave anything to chance. I headed to the dusty attic, a place I hadn't really explored since my father passed. It was packed with old boxes, forgotten furniture, and the ghosts of generations. I wasn't looking for just any old papers. I was looking for the essence of Elias Finch, the man who built this place. Deep in a trunk, beneath layers of moth-eaten blankets and old photo albums, I found it. A heavy leather-bound ledger. Not a business ledger, but more like a personal journal, filled with Elias's precise, elegant handwriting. Alongside it was a bundle of rolled-up blueprints, faded with age, tied with twine. I carefully unrolled the first blueprint. It wasn't of my house or even the clock. It was a detailed, hand-drawn map of the entire Willow Creek area, stretching beyond the current HOA boundaries. It showed intricate lines, dotted paths, and symbols I didn't immediately recognize. But what really made my heart pound was a section labeled Hydraulic System Town Water Supply. My great-grandfather, it turned out, wasn't just a clockmaker. He was one of the key engineers, a visionary who had helped design and implement the very first public water and irrigation system for Willow Creek back in the early 1900s. The journal detailed his frustrations and triumphs. This system wasn't some basic piping. It was a complex network of hidden underground reservoirs, pressure regulators, and precision-engineered valves, all designed to utilize the natural topography for efficient water distribution. And a significant portion of these critical, antique mechanisms, according to the blueprints and his notes, lay directly beneath the main town square, the very space Victoria was now trying to beautify with her heavy plastic planters and tacky sculpture. Even worse, some key components ran underneath my own property, integrated into the foundation of my workshop. The journal stressed the delicate nature of these old systems. Elias had written about the exact pressure points and the need for absolute stability above ground. He'd meticulously noted the risks. Any significant structural disturbance, heavy drilling, or ground penetration in designated areas could compromise the integrity of the main distribution lines, leading to severe pressure fluctuations and potential flooding in lower elevations. Lower elevations, meaning a significant portion of the entire neighborhood. Then, the true shock. Tucked into the back of the ledger was a yellowed, legal-sized document, notarized and dated from 1908. It was an original agreement between Elias Finch and the nascent Willow Creek Township Board. It explicitly stated that in exchange for his expertise and the use of his property for crucial system access points, the Finch family home and workshop, along with the adjacent town square parcel containing the main water control mechanisms, were designated as a protected historical and engineering site. The agreement stipulated that no structural modifications, landscaping, or public works projects could be undertaken on the town square or the Finch property without explicit written consent from the Finch family to ensure the ongoing stability of the water infrastructure. There was even a clause about permanent exemptions from any future aesthetic or structural ordinances impacting the external appearance of the primary residence and workshop, so long as essential functions are maintained. It was a legal shield, built over a century ago. But the final gut-punching revelation came not from the historical documents, but from a quick search I did online, cross-referencing Victoria Payton's name with infrastructure damage and PR scandal. My hands almost shook as I typed. Turns out this wasn't her first beautification rodeo. Before Willow Creek, Victoria had been involved in a similar high-profile urban renewal project in a different, much larger city. Her aggressive, purely aesthetic-driven plans had indeed led to severe, unforeseen damage to a much older, less documented underground drainage system. The result? Massive street flooding, property damage, and multi-million-dollar lawsuits. The city had barely avoided a public health crisis. She'd managed to hush it up, leveraging her PR connections, burying the news under a mountain of carefully crafted spin. But the lawsuits, though settled out of court with NDAs, were public record. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening thud. Her obsessive focus on impact and vision, her dismissal of anything dated, her haste to get heavy machinery onto the square. She wasn't just ignorant, she was reckless. She was repeating a pattern driven by her desperate need for public validation and media attention, completely oblivious to the catastrophic consequences, or worse, willing to risk them for a favorable headline. She wasn't just attacking my home and my legacy, she was putting the entire community's essential infrastructure and their homes at grave risk, all for a flimsy reality show aesthetic and a chance at renewed fame. The shock wasn't just about the water system, it was the chilling realization that Victoria Payton was a dangerous, repeat offender, and this whole makeover was just another stage for her next destructive act. The realization about Victoria, her past, and the hidden water system settled over me like a heavy, oiled blanket. It wasn't just my house, my clock, or my great-grandfather's legacy anymore. It was the entire neighborhood, potentially facing a disaster because of her reckless vanity. Panic? Number. That's not how a clockmaker works. You don't panic when a delicate mechanism fails. You analyze, you diagnose, and then you fix it. This was just a much larger, more complex mechanism with far higher stakes. My plan began to form, piece by methodical piece, like assembling the gears of a grand complication. It wasn't going to be about shouting or emotional outbursts. That was Victoria's game, and she was better at it. My game was precision, accuracy, undeniable proof. First, documentation. And I mean meticulous documentation. I already had Victoria's absurd notices and her dismissive email. Now I needed more. I pulled out my phone and started recording everything. Every time her beautification crew came near my property line, I filmed them. Every time Victoria posted another one of her condescending videos, I saved it. I started carrying a small, discreet voice recorder, just in case she decided to pay me another unannounced visit. I wanted clear, irrefutable evidence of her harassment, her arrogance, and her deliberate attempts to undermine me. This wasn't just for a legal battle, it was for public opinion. Second, the technical expertise. My great-grandfather's blueprints were old, but they were precise. I spent days in the workshop poring over them, comparing them to satellite images and even some old city planning maps I found online. The scale was daunting, but the logic was undeniable. I needed external validation. I reached out to an old contact, Dr. Elias Vance, a retired civil engineer from the city planning department who used to bring me his antique pocket watches. He was a stickler for historical accuracy and structural integrity. I called him, explained the situation, and sent him scanned copies of Elias Finch's blueprints and journal entries. He was intrigued, to say the least. "Caleb," he'd said, his voice grave, "if what you're saying is true, this isn't just an HOA dispute. This is a public safety hazard waiting to happen. He agreed to discreetly review everything and provide an expert opinion, a formal assessment of the risks. This wouldn't be just my word against hers, it would be engineering fact. Third, the legal foundation. The 1908 agreement was my ace in the hole, but an old, handwritten document needed to be ironclad. I took a day, drove downtown, and found a land use attorney recommended by Dr. Vance. Her name was Evelyn Pierce, and she looked at the agreement with the keen eye of a hawk. She was tough, no nonsense, and she specialized in historical property rights. She quickly confirmed the document's authenticity and its legal power. "This is gold, Caleb," she'd said, tapping the agreement. "Absolute gold. Your great-grandfather was a genius. He essentially future-proofed your property against exactly this kind of bureaucratic overreach." She outlined the steps to formally assert my rights, and more importantly, to halt any construction on the town square that could jeopardize the water system. She also suggested we compile all of Victoria's public statements and social media posts, along with evidence of her previous scandal, to show a pattern of reckless disregard for public safety. Fourth, my secret weapon, my workshop. I started working on a particular project I'd had on the back burner for years, a massive, custom-built music automaton from the late 19th century, designed to play a complex piece of orchestral music. It was huge, intricate, and utterly captivating when in motion. It had multiple figures that moved, lights that flashed, and a powerful internal mechanism. But I wasn't just restoring it, I was modifying it. Discreetly. I integrated a small, high-definition projector and a hidden speaker system into its core. The idea was that when the automaton played its piece, it wouldn't just play music. It would project images, diagrams, and text, timed to coincide with a pre-recorded narrative. A narrative that would tell the true story of the water system, Victoria's past, and her reckless plans. It would be an audiovisual presentation delivered by an antique in a way no one would ever expect. It was subtle, elegant, and had the potential to be devastatingly effective. Finally, the stage. Victoria was planning a grand unveiling of her beautified town square, a big public event likely to draw local media. She wanted a wow factor. I'd give her a WTF factor. I would bring the automaton to the event, ostensibly as a historical contribution to the new Harmony. She'd never suspect a thing. She'd probably even try to take credit for it. It was perfect. She thrived on public spectacle, and I was about to give her the biggest one of her life, just not the one she was planning. Every gear, every spring, every meticulous detail was falling into place. She was rushing headlong into a trap, meticulously crafted by an old clockmaker who understood that the most powerful forces are often hidden, waiting for the perfect moment to be unleashed. Victoria's Willow Creek Reimagined launch party was set for a Saturday afternoon. She'd gone all out, of course, banners, balloons, and sickly pastel colors, a small stage set up next to the spot where the old oak tree used to be, now dominated by her hideous metal sculpture. She'd even arranged for a local news crew to be there, probably hoping for some fluff piece about her visionary leadership. She wanted a captive audience, and I was going to give it to her. My part of the plan started quietly. Over the preceding weeks, I'd been working late every night in the workshop, perfecting the automaton. It was a beautiful, ornate piece, standing nearly 5 feet tall, with intricate moving figures and a complex series of chimes and bells. I'd carefully integrated the projector, small and hidden, and the speakers, camouflaged within its mahogany casing. The programming was precise, timed to the millisecond. The day of the party, I wheeled the automaton out on a custom-built, heavy-duty cart, making sure it looked like a prized, historical display piece. My old friend, Dr. Vance, the engineer, arrived looking professorial, carrying a discreet briefcase. Evelyn Pierce, my lawyer, arrived separately, blending into the crowd, sharp and ready. I saw Victoria beaming, mingling with the news crew, completely oblivious. She spotted me in the automaton, and for a second I thought she might object. But then her eyes lit up with that self-serving gleam. "Caleb, darling, what a magnificent contribution, such quaint charm. We'll simply have to feature it in our social media." She was already picturing the likes, probably. She even suggested placing it right up front, near the stage. Perfect. The ceremony began. Victoria, in a ridiculously tailored pastel suit, took the stage, microphone in hand. She launched into a long, rambling speech about progress, community spirit, and our shared aesthetic future. She praised the new sculpture, the new eco-friendly plastic plants, the vibrant energy of the new Willow Creek. She even made a veiled dig at those who resist change, glancing pointedly in my direction, drawing a few polite titters from the crowd. The news camera was fixed on her, dutifully recording every carefully crafted word. Just as she was winding down, ready for the big ribbon-cutting moment, I gave a subtle nod to Dr. Vance and Evelyn. Then I stepped forward and with a flourish pressed the concealed button on the side of the automaton. A soft whirring sound filled the air, then the delicate chimes of the automaton began to play, a sweet, melancholic melody. People turned, intrigued. The little figures on the automaton began to move, their intricate gears catching the sunlight. It looked like a charming, harmless historical exhibit. But then, the hidden projector whirred to life. A crisp, detailed image flashed onto the white backdrop screen Victoria had set up behind the stage for her own presentation. It wasn't a picture of beautiful flowers, it was a scanned copy of Elias Finch's original 1908 blueprint of the Willow Creek water system, with critical components highlighted in bright red. Victoria stopped mid-sentence, her smile freezing. Her eyes darted to the screen, then to me, then back to the news camera, which was now swinging to capture the projection. As the automaton continued to play its haunting melody, my voice, calm and clear, amplified through its hidden speakers, began narrating. It wasn't a shouting match, it was a methodical, almost scientific presentation. "Good afternoon, neighbors," my voice echoed. As Victoria has so eloquently stated, this is indeed a time for progress, but true progress, I believe, is built on understanding the past, not erasing it. On the screen, the images changed. Now it was a cross-section diagram showing the intricate network of pipes and pressure regulators buried just feet beneath their shoes. My voice explained in simple terms how fragile these century-old mechanisms were, how crucial they were to their water supply, and how any heavy impact or deep drilling could cause irreversible damage. "This is not merely historical information," my voice continued as the automaton's figures pointed towards critical sections on the blueprint. "This is a matter of public safety, and it brings us to a rather concerning development." Next, Evelyn Pierce, my lawyer, stepped forward. She held up the original 1908 notarized agreement, its yellowed parchment stark against the bright, artificial backdrop. "This document," she announced, her voice resonating with quiet authority, "signed by the original township founders and Mr. Finch's great-grandfather, Elias Finch, explicitly designates this town square and the Finch property as a protected historical and engineering site. It stipulates that no structural modifications, landscaping, or public works projects may be undertaken without explicit written consent from the Finch family to ensure the ongoing stability of this vital infrastructure." Victoria's face was a mask of disbelief, then dawning horror. She tried to interrupt. "This is ridiculous. A homicitas. Mr. Finch is trying to undermine the community." But the news crew, sensing a far bigger story than plastic flowers, had their cameras fixed on Evelyn, then on me, then back to the projected blueprints. "Forgery, Ms. Peyton," my voice calmly countered as the automaton now projected images from her previous urban renewal project. News articles, blurry but clear photos of flooded streets, and headlines about infrastructure failure from a different city, or perhaps a pattern of disregard for the unseen consequences of your visionary projects. I then played a short, pre-recorded audio clip I'd subtly captured from Victoria's own phone, a snippet from a private conversation she had with one of her PR people, where she was heard dismissing concerns about ground stability on the square. It was a minor detail, but it revealed her deliberate ignorance. The crowd, which had been politely murmuring, now began to stir, a low rumble of shock and anger. People started pulling out their own phones, recording. Dr. Vance, stepping up beside Evelyn, then presented his official engineering assessment. Based on these original designs, any significant disturbance to the ground in this area, such as the installation of heavy sculptures or deep-rooted landscaping, carries an extremely high risk of compromising the main water lines. The potential for widespread water disruption and localized flooding is severe. Victoria was frantic. She snatched the microphone from the stand. "This is defamation. Lies. I am the president of the HOA. I have the community's best interests at heart." Her voice was shrill, desperate. But the automaton, with perfect timing, projected the final image. A list of the mounting absurd fines she'd levied against me, culminating in the bolded line from her dismissive letter, "Failure to adhere will result in escalated enforcement." Then, a split second later, the news headline I'd seen days ago, "HOA President declares war on eyesore Clock Tower, vows total demolition." "You wanted to demolish my clock tower, Ms. Peyton," my voice echoed, calm and even, through the suddenly quiet square. "A symbol of history, built by the man who gave this community its water, all for a wow factor and a few more followers for your social media. Perhaps you forgot that some structures, like some truths, are built on foundations far deeper than fleeting aesthetics." The crowd erupted, not in applause, but in a wave of shocked understanding and anger. Whispers turned into shouts. She knew. Our water supply? Flooding? Victoria, seeing her carefully constructed facade crumbling, tried to retreat, but the crowd, now fully aware, surged forward, blocking her path. Her reimagined Willow Creek launch party had just become her very public, very humiliating reckoning. As the automaton projected the final image, the news headline flashing across the screen like a damning indictment, a ripple of stunned silence fell over the crowd. It lasted only a second, maybe two. Then it broke. A murmur, like a beehive waking up, quickly swelled into a furious roar. "What?" someone shouted from the back. "Our water supply? Is that true?" She knew about this. Another voice bellowed, filled with disbelief. Victoria, her face a mask of panic, dropped the microphone. It hit the stage with a thud, sending a piercing squeal through the speakers. Her meticulously styled hair seemed to wilt, her carefully applied makeup suddenly looked smeared. She tried to stammer something, a desperate, fumbling attempt to regain control. This is slander, a malicious attack. Mr. Finch is just trying to stop progress." But her words were drowned out. The news camera, which had been fixed on the projected images and my calm, unwavering presentation, now swung back to Victoria, capturing her unraveling in real time. The reporter, a young woman with a sharp eye, was already talking rapidly into her mic, her voice low but urgent. "We have an unexpected turn here at the Willow Creek Reimagined launch event," she narrated, clearly relishing the unfolding drama. "Allegations of a century-old historical agreement and potential infrastructure damage are now being leveled against HOA President Victoria Payton." People in the crowd, many of whom had blindly followed Victoria's lead, now had their phones out, not just recording, but sharing. The local Facebook group, Willow Creek Community Harmony, which Victoria had used to spread her propaganda, was now alight with angry comments and shares of my automaton's damning presentation. Pictures of Elias's blueprints, side by side with Victoria's past scandal headlines, went viral within minutes. Victoria, seeing her carefully constructed public image disintegrate before her eyes, looked like a cornered animal. She tried to push past the reporters, but Evelyn Pierce, my lawyer, was right there. Calm, collected, she stepped forward. "Ms. Payton," Evelyn stated, her voice clear and cutting through the din, "my client has presented irrefutable evidence. Not only does this original township agreement protect his property in the town square, but your plans for this beautification project demonstrably endanger the fundamental infrastructure of this entire community. Furthermore, your history of similar reckless actions in other cities, now publicly exposed, paints a clear picture of negligence and a blatant disregard for public safety in pursuit of personal gain and fleeting media attention." She held up a thick binder. "We have compiled extensive documentation, including sworn affidavits from engineering experts, proving the imminent risk. We are prepared to file an immediate injunction to halt all construction on the town square, and we will be seeking legal action for damages incurred by Mr. Finch, as well as a full review of your conduct as HOA president." The crowd surged closer, now openly hostile. "Resign!" someone yelled. "You put us all at risk." Victoria finally broke. She didn't shout, didn't argue. She just looked around, her eyes darting from face to face, seeing only condemnation. The arrogant smirk was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. Her carefully constructed facade, the one built on plastic smiles and superficial glamour, shattered completely. She didn't even try to address the accusations. Instead, she just turned, pushed through the startled HOA board members who were standing shell-shocked on the stage, and practically ran from the square, tripping slightly on her high heels as she hurried towards her white SUV. Her PR assistant, looking utterly mortified, scrambled after her, frantically trying to block the news camera. As Victoria's SUV sped away, leaving a plume of dust, the cheers that erupted weren't for her vision, but for her public humiliation. The crowd, now energized, turned to me not with suspicion, but with a newfound respect. Mr. Henderson, the retired schoolteacher, came up to me, his face pale. "Caleb, I had no idea," he said, shaking his head. "She spun such a tale. We were all so misled." Mrs. Davies, the music box lady, even managed a shaky smile. The news reporter, now with a live microphone, turned back to me. "Mr. Finch, what is your message to the community after today's shocking revelations?" I looked at the beautiful working automaton, its tiny figures still moving, its melody fading. Then I looked at the raw, gaping hole where the old oak tree used to be, and the grotesque metal sculpture Victoria had put in its place. "My message," I said, my voice tired but firm, "is that true progress isn't about tearing down the past for some glossy, soulless future. It's about understanding what's truly beneath the surface, about respecting history, and about building something genuine, something that truly serves the community, not just one person's vanity." The humiliation was complete. Victoria Payton was exposed, not just as a manipulative HOA president, but as a reckless fraud who had endangered an entire neighborhood for her own selfish ambition. And the entire community had seen it, loud and clear, on a stage she herself had set. The dust from Victoria Peyton's rapid exit settled, literally and figuratively, over Willow Creek. The news report about the HOA scandal, hidden infrastructure at risk, went national for a day or two, then faded, replaced by the next headline. But for our community, it was a turning point. Within a week, Victoria was formally removed from her position as HOA president. The board, thoroughly shaken and facing potential lawsuits from both me and potentially the city, conducted an emergency meeting. With Evelyn Pierce present, calmly presenting all the evidence, they had no choice. Her name, once synonymous with progress and modern harmony in the HOA emails, became a byword for reckless arrogance. I heard she eventually tried to restart her online presence, but the backlash from the Willow Creek incident, combined with the resurfacing of her past scandals, made her a pariah in the influencer world. Good riddance. As for the town square, the hideous metal sculpture was the first thing to go. Then, carefully, meticulously, the contractors hired by the new HOA board began the delicate work of excavating around the main water system components. Under the watchful eyes of Dr. Vance and a team of historical engineers, they confirmed everything Elias had written in his journal. The system was indeed incredibly robust for its age, but also fragile in its specific points. They made the necessary repairs and reinforced the vulnerable sections, ensuring the water supply was secure for generations to come. The HOA, under new, more sensible leadership, reached out to me. There were no more fines, of course. Instead, they offered to reimburse me for the legal fees and even proposed a formal apology. I accepted the apology but declined the reimbursement. My great-grandfather's agreement meant my property was now officially exempt from all aesthetic regulations anyway. The clock on my facade continued to tick, its familiar chime a comforting rhythm that now felt even more significant. The town square wasn't reimagined with plastic. Instead, it became a true public space, much like it was always intended to be. The stump of the old oak was left, carefully treated and preserved, and a new indigenous oak sapling was planted next to it, a symbol of quiet resilience and growth. The ugly sculpture was gone, replaced by a simple, elegant bench and a small, unassuming historical marker that briefly explained the unique water system beneath and the legacy of Elias Finch. My workshop became a bit of an informal community hub. Neighbors, many of whom had been distant or even hostile during Victoria's reign, started stopping by. Not just to chat, but to bring me old family heirlooms, clocks that had stopped ticking generations ago, music boxes that had lost their song. They weren't just asking for repairs, they were asking for stories. They wanted to connect with the history, the craftsmanship, the enduring value that Victoria had so desperately tried to erase. Mrs. Gable brought me her grandmother's pocket watch just to have me tell her about its mechanism. Tom Henderson, the mailman, started lingering again, not just for a chat, but sometimes just to watch me work. The quiet hum of the workshop filling the silence. I still spend my days surrounded by gears, springs, and the quiet satisfaction of bringing broken things back to life. The ticking of my great-grandfather's clock on the facade is no longer drowned out by construction noise or Victoria's shrill voice. It just continues its steady, rhythmic count, a constant reminder that some things, built with integrity and purpose, truly stand the test of time, quietly and enduringly, long after the noise and superficiality have faded away. And that, to me, is the best kind of victory.